On the get a multimeter that has a continuity test on it, that has a beep. I bought one yesterday, and on the box it had a beep on it, but when I got it out of the box, it didn't have a beep on it. So mine doesn't have a beep on it, so I got a little bit pissed off by that. But regardless of that, I found a mode that I can test kind of continuity on. At the moment this dial says 1, but if you put the two contacts together, you'll see that it jumps about a bit. So obviously there's a connection there. So what I did first was, as I've unscrewed it, I checked one end of these little diodes or capacitors or whatever they are, just to make sure that they were all kicking out consistent measurements, which they were, no problems with any of those. And then, like I said, I went through and tested, like, this bit of solder via a trace is connected to this bit of solder, and I just checked all of those. Incidentally, under this key here, there's another group of solders which is connected to this little connection here, which you can't see, but there are traces at the top of this keyboard, just above the contacts, which run down to this little connection, but they aren't connected to this bit of solder here, so you won't get any readings if you run this bit of solder to the connection solder. It doesn't work like that. What I did do though is if I show you here, I did check the connection down here to the end of this contact here, which is probably not a good idea, but I did it anyway. They were all fine. Incidentally, I also marked the keys that weren't working, because otherwise I'd be checking them all constantly. So just with a little biro, I just marked the bit of rubber there to indicate which keys weren't working. So I did find the fault. One of the traces weren't as they should be, and that was causing, so it was the trace down here. It was with where the little bit of muck I found earlier was, and once I'd removed the muck, it had corroded into the trace and stopped the continuity. So that caused this little bit of solder to not be connected to this connection down here. So it caused 1, 2, 3 bits of solder not to work, or not to be connected. So that was 3 diodes, and that was your 3 keys that weren't working. Between this point and this point weren't working, this point and this point and this point and this point, because they weren't giving out any reads on this. The number stayed at 1 when it should have gone to 0.02 on my things anyway. So what I was advised to do when I first started this, this was all basically the theory that was being given to me by a couple of people, that you've probably got a trace problem and you'll probably have to put in a jumper cable, which is or a jumper wire, which is just a little bit of wire that you solder to the connection to bypass this trace, so that you are now getting a connection between the two, and for the other 3 as well. So make sure that it's an insulated bit of wire to stay safe. What I did was, behind here I've got, like I said, I've built a few PCs in my time, and I just had an old CPU. So I don't know whether it makes any difference which cable you use out of that, but so post a comment about that. But I had a look at the connection underneath and just, had the relative bit of solder to look at. Saw it was a brown wire, so I took a brown wire off this just for a little bit of consistency. So what I did then, I've got a bag of them to put back now. Oh, also just a quick mention about the keys before I go any further. When I took out all the keys, I laid them out as they would be, so I know how to put them back. Where were we? I was talking about this cable. So I'd stripped it so there were wires at each end, and then I soldered them. Make sure that your soldering iron, once you plugged it in, is resting on something safe like that. You don't want to burn a hole through your carpet. Don't touch any of the metal bit because that's going to be hot once it's running. Here's a wet sponge just to kind of dab it if I need it to cool down a bit. And here's the solder, which I'd burn through once it heated up. And the solder sits on the iron. And then what I decided to do was add the solder on the wire first, just like that. So it sat on the wire, so I didn't have to like kind of add the solder as I was working on it. I already had the solder on the wire, and all I had to do was heat it up again. So that's basic. That was the fix. I soldered on a jumper wire to the two solder patches that weren't connected properly by the trace. I flipped it back over and tested it again, and they all worked, so I'm pretty happy with that. Now I've just got to put the bugger back together again. So yeah, that's it. That's how to fix your SH-101 if any of the keys aren't working. There might be other reasons why your keys aren't working. The rubber contact underneath could be really dirty. You just need to clean that out. But yeah, if 3 keys aren't working, it's probably because one of these isn't hooked up and they're not linked up together. So that was my solution. I hope this video has been useful, and maybe one day I'll do a video about playing this thing, because it really is one of the better synths. I think it's my personal favourite. It can sound absolutely fat with kind of Moog leads, put a bit of distortion on it. It can sound like an MS-20. So easy to use, and as it turns out, very easy to repair too. So I hope you enjoyed this. Bye.